Es una de las películas que más me gustó del año y la pueden ver por dos razones. Una, porque los dos pibes protagonistas la rompen y es imposible no conectar con ellos. Y la otra es porque dice entrevista. Les quiero hablar de Snack Shack, una película protagonizada por dos adolescentes que en sus vacaciones de verano se ponen a vender golosinas en la tienda que está junto a una piscina muy concurrida. Y todo va de mil maravillas, claro, hasta que aparece la nueva chica del bar. Y si necesitabas más razones para verla, fíjate lo que me cuenta su editor.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
That's something that's very different than most anything I've worked on. Even on the really great stuff that I've done, I haven't felt that. You don't get that very often where you feel like I'm just observing people's lives.
You made this? How old are you guys?
16.
Hey! You idiots are gonna end up on the side of a frickin' milk carton.
I think one of the great things he did, which with this, especially in the indie world, like, you're always a little bit worried about that first week, like people getting up to speed and thing. And he did this great thing where he rehearsed with the two boys, like 2 weeks before they started shooting. So the second I started getting dailies, and I was like, man, they are really good, from like the get go. And because he had them working in the Snack Shack, and he kind of had them like living there and getting to know the town. And so I thought that helped so much because it felt already the relationship felt lived in by the time the movie started, which to me, that makes cutting the performances really easy.
I'm grounded. No more running free range all summer. I've got 1 week to find a legit job before my mom goes full tilt DEFCON.
Adam and I are essentially the same age. I think he's a couple years older than me, but we grew up in the same time. So it was like, that was a time that was very easy to kind of be like, okay, what is this period? And so it was very easy for us to relate. We both kind of came of that kind of time period, and so I think kind of figuring out what that was, I mean, a lot of that is sort of in the script, but then what I brought to it and like talking with him was just getting specific about like music and just kind of the energy of the boys with like the editing, and I think that was like what I think I brought a lot to it. I mean, he had really a lot of ideas about music, but I brought a lot to it. I mean, that was one of our really shared things, like since we were friends, because he plays music and I'm really into music, as you can see from the records. So we just have a very shared language that way.
Let's get to work. We need this fucker spick and span in case some hell inspector comes sniffing around.
And the good thing too is they shot in Nebraska City, and shooting in smaller towns in the US, things don't change radically different, so it was kind of an interesting thing to be like, okay, cool, it's much easier to do period when you're not in like New York or somewhere else where it's like things radically change very quickly.
I love your instincts. So that's why you're gonna run HR, handle all the recruiting.
When they're wrestling in like the park where you like throw something, I was like, oh, this is the relationship they're gonna have. And I mean, I think it was something Adam and I talked about too way before he was doing the movie, which he was like, I want these kids to feel like kids who swear and are messy and like are not like a lot of teen movies. You feel like it's teen movies written by adults about what they think teens are like, and this, like, I knew it from the page. I was like, this feels like what teens feel like. This feels like it's not talking down to teens. It's treating teens as actual people. I think that's one of the real strengths of the movie. I mean, we talked a lot about like, to me, it was like Bad News Bears, like a film like that of like, these kids are kids. They're not kids as seen by adults who are trying to sanitize them, or trying to like have a nice look back, at like what life is like. Life is messy, and like life is really messy as a teen. Your emotions are all over the place. You're trying to figure things out. And so I think it was like that. And I think one of the strengths too is like the boys are like, they're crass, but like young boys are crass, like, and I think that's one of the strengths of the movie is like, they are crass. They're crass in the sexuality of how they talk about girls because they don't have any experience, with people. And so we just never wanted to back away from any of that, and just embrace like the rough and tumble thing of like I said, that wrestling with the boys. It's like boys are really tough on each other. Kids, like they're very bruising, like how they treat each other. And so it was like, we wanted to have it be very, like that part be very in your face. And I think the movie changes obviously when Brooke comes into the picture, but very early on, it was like, we want these boys to be like boys, and not be like.
They're also loud, not only crass, but they are also loud.
Yes, yes. Yeah, very loud. Yeah.
Give me a fucked up, kid.
You're unbelievable.
I think it's a couple different things. I mean, I think it does a good job of just being honest about how boys are and how, kind of honestly, how inarticulate they are. And honestly, I think, we haven't talked enough about the Brooke character, but I think also kind of the fumblingness of like your first crushes or liking people, and like not knowing how to communicate and like lashing out and not being good. I mean, I can relate a lot to that. It's like, it's very, I think that's something a lot of young guys go through, a lot of young boys who like, feel like, how do I express these emotions? But I don't really know how to do it. And I don't know really how to talk to a girl. And I don't, and I think there was, I mean, to me, there was so many like moments early on that I was like, oh, I think we have something really special here. I mean, I think one of them I remember sending to Adam was with Shane and AJ when they're doing the map in his bedroom. And I was just like, this is just two guys talking. And yet you can just see it's this younger kid looking up his older boy and wanting his approval. And like, that to me felt very relatable. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of like, that was like it's very much a small town thing. I grew up in Minneapolis, was a little bigger, but Adam grew up in a smaller town and I had relatives in a smaller town. And so it was a very common thing to have like, you just had older kids around because it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. But you either look for that for like, either with older brothers or cousins or, and I had that with like certain people in my life. And I remember that being really special. And then I also just remember when I did that scene and I put like some temp score to it, which I just remember it being like, this just feels really special, because I just don't feel like it was something I would get a lump in my throat just watching, And then the scene where like AJ paints Brooke's toenails, like on the lawn, that to me is another one that's just like a really special scene that like brought me, like at cutting it, I just got so wrapped up in the characters. I mean, that's the thing I think was really special about the film, and I think special about the thing I'm doing now with Adam is that I don't think of them as actors. I don't think of them as like I'm cutting performance. I feel like I'm just cutting people, feel like I'm cutting characters, and I'm really caught up in their lives. I mean, I felt like I got really caught up in their lives and who these people were, not as like, how do I get this performance work, but how do I get this person to work?
Want a little advice, homie? Make a move. Any move.
Hago un pequeño paréntesis en la entrevista para advertirles que lo que viene acá adelante es un spoiler gigante de la película, así que solamente continúen si ya terminaron de verla.
I didn't know how you were going to solve that issue of them like fighting because of her. And then it's when that scene that you don't see coming, that is the death scene. How was doing that, and why do you think it's necessary for the film?
Well, and I'm assuming obviously it's a spoiler thing. So you're talking about the death. Okay. So, I mean, I should say, so this is like the story is basically based on Adam's life growing up. So that person, Shane, the character, is actually based on a friend they had, who an older friend in the town who actually died. So that's the true thing. So he was like, it's something he wrote, but it was a way to like bring them back together, And I think for us doing it, it was more, I think doing the scene, that's at least when he goes to the pool, it was like we wanted to be a long take. We wanted to keep it as, long and like also kind of, bring in the sound of the cicadas. And also, I think the thing that, like I said, this is where I think the music became an important part. I think we knew that there was going to be some abrasiveness with like with the actual songs we use, like, because you want to have like the 90s kind of music and like things that are very loud in your face and what you're listening to. But I always felt like we needed to balance it off with what we did with the score with our composer and have a gentleness to it, because I think it's all about I think all great films have a great contrast. And I think especially if you're using a film that has a lot of like heavy songs, it's like great to, especially this songs that are very like I said, they can be very much like The Boys, or in your face. I feel it's great to contrast that with something else in the score and not just do the same thing, you know, and this was to show a different side, you know, of that. I mean, I think the score is as much a part of a character as the boys, as the town, as anything. You know, I think that about score in general, or just music in general. So I think, you know, score was a big part of that, and just trying to have a gentleness to it, you know. And I think all good coming of age films have that. They're really good ones. You know, there's a gentleness to them because it's a tough time, you know, and like you don't really realize how tough it is. And I think going through an event like that is, you aren't equipped with the emotions to know how devastating it is, you know. And I think it's something that was just a kind of, I think in all of Adam's films, and we're actually doing a new one now. I think he's a really amazing director, and he's my friend. And so it's like, but there's a certain magic that he's able to bring to, like, with the cast and everything. And I remember just seeing that long take of the thing, and there was just something really magical about it. I mean, and it was just kind of like, you just felt like I think it does a thing that you don't see a lot in movies or in cinema now, in that he just shows up the pool, and without having to have dialogue or words, you kind of know that whatever this traumatic event's happened has really healed these boys, you know, because they don't know how to deal with it. And you go to the people you love, you know. So I think it's a really kind of moving thing that I don't think it's hard to explain. And like on the page, I was like, oh, we'll see if this works. And then when I saw it, I was like, this is kind of incredible.